Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Nathan Collins.
And I'm Terza Christopher. Thank you for joining us.
Tonight, we're taking an in-depth look at the News 21 project, In Pursuit. A team of journalists from colleges across the country spent their summer here at ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. They worked together on a solutions-based reporting project, taking a look at efforts to reform police departments and provide better accountability.
Will true reform actually happen in my lifetime? Maybe. I really hope so.
What do we want it now? What do we want? Justice!
The police are given the most significant responsibility of any government official. They have the power to kill.
We had somebody killed every single month. We were arrested almost every week, but there was just a commitment where you surrender your life to something bigger than your life.
Where we began training all our officers in CIT, Crisis Intervention Team Training. And as a result, though, we saw our use of force drop.
That police officers sometimes use excessive use of force. That police officers sometimes violate their oath.
I think there's value in any change, regardless of how incremental.
The future of policing is about building relationships. The city does not need less police. They want fair and just policing.
You have to be willing to fight for what you want, and you've got to be all in.
It's going to take a village. It's going to take Akron. It's going to take the community to come out.
Once we're organized and together, we really can make the kinds of changes that we want to make.
We've been knocking on hell's door for a while. Hopefully we'll stop knocking, but I still hear banging at the door, so I'm not sure.
Police following traffic stop policies are regularly being questioned whether they're actually making people safe. One mother tells her story on the loss of her son during a police incident.
I don't ever want another family to feel how I felt.
The only reason why we felt that it got to that point was because of profiling, making pretextual stops.
They don't understand the ripple effects of these murders and how they can trickle and traumatize a family.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Justice for Orlando!
We have a draft policy already now, and the implementation committee policy work group has gone through working with, LEAP, the Law Enforcement Action Partnership Group. But the traffic stop policy, they went through and looked at the reasons that police pull people over for. And they've had this discussion in the work group, and the end result is the work group has said, these reasons are don't really further the safety of people in traffic necessarily, or are not so egregious that they cause any real problem on the road such that you need to pull people over for, have that be the primary reason why you pull them over.
When you look at that, it's like, well, then take the law out of the vehicle and traffic book, because if you don't want us enforcing the law, then don't make the law. And again, there's been many cases solved and bigger cases solved because of little things that somebody has wrong. So it's a different. I think the next, I don't call it battle. The big push out there is to further restrict law enforcement officers, from being able to do their job. And because when it blows up in everybody's face at the end, it's like, well, how come you guys didn't do your job? Well, you don't want us to do our job.
People sometimes look at it as we want to defund the police, or we want to get rid of the police, or we're not respecting or supporting the police. And that's not what we're asking in this resolution. We are asking, we all know that we still need police officers, right? If somebody is hurt or breaking into your home, or you're going to call the police. But where is the real policing being done? That's what we need. If it's a broken tail light, expired tabs, those are really two big issues that if you're able to afford to get your tabs, you're going to, right? Or if you're able to fix your tail light, of course you're going to. But if you're going to drive to work because you don't get paid till next Friday and you're going to risk it, you're going to do that. We know that traffic stops are very intense and they can escalate very quickly for the person that's getting pulled over, but also for the police officer. So it's keeping our community safe, it's keeping our police officers safe, it's keeping our children safe.
We have to start somewhere, and we're not getting things done on a state level. So at least we can try on a city level. And so what we're trying to do is say, okay, maybe these other cities and maybe the state will follow this city's league within Minnesota.
We're willing to sit down and talk and listen, because there's definitely two points of view. But if I'd rather have a piece of legislation that has my input into it instead of somebody shoving it down my throat, and then I'm definitely not going to be happy about it.
8 years ago, a 17-year-old African-American teen was fatally shot by a white police officer in Chicago. Initial reporting stated that Laquan McDonald was acting erratically, but dashcam video released a year after his death indicates he was just walking away. 7 years after that video, there's still a push for greater transparency in Chicago police.
Underlying transparency is the capacity to be transparent and the inclination to be transparent.
I mean, I truly think that transparency is foundational for other things we want to see happen.
What would I like to see in accountability? We want videos to be released. We want this we want police reports to be issued.
I could not say definitively what happened that night. What I could say with absolute certainty was the police account of what happened could not be true. Latter part of October, we got a tip, and it came from somebody in law enforcement to the effect of, that shooting that was reported a week ago, the police shooting, it was not at all what was reported. It was horrific, and there's video. And the source also provided some information about a civilian witness. I didn't name this source. He was very afraid of police retaliation. But I can say now his name. It's known as Jose Torres. He had an unimpeded view of the incident. And there was no question in his mind that the young man, he didn't know his name at that point, was moving away from the police rather than towards them when he was shot. He also hauntingly described that the officer had fired one or two shots. The boy had fallen to the ground. There had been an extended pause, and then the barrage of shots that ended up being 16 shots. Ultimately, a judge ordered the city to release the video. Interestingly, the city didn't appeal, and then, as I said, this incredible cascade of events, the firing of the police superintendent, the firing of the chief administrator for the agency.
You need an extraordinary force amplifier. You need that booster rocket to get beyond that gravity. I think a lot of people thought, and with good reason, that the Laquan McDonald murder provided that sort of moment. But we didn't keep our eyes on the ball.
We're now how many years out? 7 years, since the video was released. And so much has happened. And so much hasn't happened.
By almost any outward measure, unless he is wielding some form of weapon of mass destruction, constitutes a public execution. And that is the narrative that activists applied and the public understood once the video, the Laquan McDonald video, was released.
When there's a push for greater transparency, police and other law enforcement agencies argue that you can't do that, the sky will fall. Police officers will be harassed, investigations and covert operations will be compromised, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We now have had close to a decade when this information in one form or another was public in Illinois. And the sky, in fact, hasn't fallen.
Georgia police are participating in de-escalation training. One tragic incident shows how training could help reduce potential violence.
I'm so sorry to bother you. You got a minute? I just had to shoot a man. And, yeah, I know, man. And I was wondering if you could help me out.
It's a horrible case, factually.
I pitted him, and I had to shoot him. I'm trying to render aid, but he's got a gunshot wound to the head.
The trooper tried to effectuate the stop against Mr. Lewis for allegedly a broken taillight. We viewed the video, and we didn't see a broken taillight. He was on his way home from work, and he had called his wife, and she said, "Yeah, can you go by and get me a Coke at the store?"
I think it's a 10 Nissan. Paul David.
So he had stopped by the store to get her a Coke and was on his way home. It was a rather slow speed, I don't want to call it chase, but that's what it was, I guess. After a few minutes, the trooper performed a pit maneuver on Mr. Lewis's vehicle on a one-lane dirt road. The trooper got out of his vehicle and immediately shot Mr. Lewis in the head. And the trooper's story was that Mr. Lewis was revving his engine in a threatening manner, and he thought that Mr. Lewis was going to use the vehicle as a weapon.
Jesus Christ, he almost ran over. Oh my God.
He shot him in less than 2 seconds. Mr. Lewis was not a threat to anyone. He could have put the cuffs on him and taken him away. So I would hope that de-escalation training and more use of force training would have impacted that.
De-escalation allows you to communicate in a number of different ways to figure out what's going to resonate with this person in order to get him to comply. And so in 2004, we began training all our officers in CIT, Crisis Intervention Team Training. CIT teaches you to identify those individuals that are symptomatic of the characteristics that you associate with mental illness, and then an emphasis on de-escalation. It's that. It's also using the lowest level that's you can reasonably use. And so we have a host of less lethal. We have pepper spray, we have pepper ball guns, we have bolo wrap.
Bolo, bolo, bolo.
And as a result, though, we saw our use of force drop.
Get it all collected up. One thing I like about the use of force and de-escalation is it focuses on de-escalation. Even our traffic stops, we have built-in de-escalation, 8-step traffic stop, how we encounter, how we engage. So when you choose not to recognize that, hey, there are changes that need to be made, you want to stay back in the old way of thinking, it's going to cause suffering. Some stuff like crisis intervention training, I love that. That's you know, it's a 40-hour week class, but that's what's needed, especially because everything you're dealing with is a crisis. Honestly, just the amount of training we endure, the oversight, the ability to really community police, I think that's something that it speaks volumes, because in order to change a generation, you have to be consistent, like I said earlier, and that comes from professional standards, being able to carry yourself as an officer, be a guardian, and this is definitely a place for it.
The refusal to de-escalate, or the inability to de-escalate, that cuts across races. There are some who just don't de-escalate. I mean, all he had to do was put cuffs on Mr. Lewis. No need to kill him.
A medical center in Oklahoma aims to help police on mental health related calls. We take a look at how they're making an impact.
I have a question. Are you feeling a little frustrated today? Are you? But it's not as bad as it usually is, because it don't sound as bad as it has been in the past. It sounds, you're a little frustrated, but it's not too bad.
Our iPad program is a level of care that literally puts treatment on demand in your hand. It is the ability to receive outpatient care from your team, regardless of your location, and to be able to get crisis support and 24/7 care literally at the touch of a button. It has expanded into providing additional support for the law enforcement officers in our community to be able to work hand in hand with us in providing crisis intervention.
You know what I've noticed though? You know what I've noticed? Because usually when you call me, you got the best wigs on.
I've been through mental health crises. I've been through addiction. I've been incarcerated. You know, I've been to a place in my life where I felt like I had a monkey on my back and I couldn't get that monkey off.
You want me to call you back in 15 minutes?
I think you need to.
I will.
These people are scared of the police, and that could trigger something. It's known. You see it all the time on the news. You hear about it. And this is not all police officers. There's some. They abuse their power, and instead of de-escalating the situation, they either get scared or overwhelmed, and they pull their gun out and shoot. So that causes minorities to have issues with trusting what they would think is the system. I like the fact that we have iPads and we can call the police, hey, this person needs a wellness check. They go up, hey, everything all right? I got an iPad. Can you talk to the therapist? That's them being involved, and that's good enough. You know, just come in with a smile on your face, showing love and kindness, come to serve like you're supposed to, like anybody in that situation is supposed to, just to protect and serve. What I've seen on the other side, being incarcerated for 8 years, it's a lot of people that are incarcerated because they were in a mental health crisis and they blinked and they were in prison.
When we de-invested in institutionalization, we never invested in community-based services. We're just getting there now. So we took people out of institutions, and then where did they go? Jail, law enforcement, those were the places. What we needed were ways for people to access community-based services so they continue living their lives, continue being at home. What we know is we need to get people to the least restrictive, least costly setting of care. 988 provides a pathway to not even involve law enforcement. So really 988 should change the game. Only a few states are using 988 to really develop out a comprehensive crisis continuum of care. You are actually looking at increased investment in mobile crisis response teams, in physical facilities such as crisis centers, urgent recovery centers, and the state will tell you there's lessons to be learned, there are kinks to be worked out, but the fact that now in Bartlesville or Miami or pick your rural community, there is a chance of a mobile crisis response in every area of Oklahoma is pretty innovative.
Used to, if you have somebody who's having a crisis, you have to load them up, take them and sit forever at the hospital. Our iPad gives them immediate help. There is no waiting, they get stressed out, have to be taken one place to the next. They may not want to leave their home at that time. So we have the option of giving them the iPad at that time. Hi, Nicole. I mean, and the best part about it is they provide iPads for individuals at their residence. So if they're having about it, they don't necessarily have to call us. They can just pull out their iPad at home.
There's always going to be a collaboration between law enforcement and mental health. There's never going to be a situation where law enforcement is never in the picture, because they're the ones who get the call about the person on the bridge. They're the ones who get the call about the person who maybe is a domestic violence situation at a household where a mental illness might be involved. That's never going to change. What's going to change is we can better and more effectively access the mental health services that we do and wrap around that encounter so that the appropriate person is the one primarily responding when we need to.
We want to get people to the right avenue of care for them, the right place. And I think that we can all agree that that's not jail in most cases.
It can affect anybody. It can affect the homeless guy on the street who's addicted to alcohol. It can affect the successful judge. It can affect a police officer. It can affect anybody. Successful, unsuccessful, black, white, Mexican, Native, it does not discriminate. And more people need to bring awareness about it, because there's a lot of people who are suffering with mental health issues in the United States, taking their lives, can't get out of bed because they just don't have enough strength. It's time for us to come together as America and start caring for people.
Across the country, community members gathered to remember victims of police gun violence through murals. For one woman in Salt Lake City, her cousin's image is how she helps share his story.
When you guys asked me to bring a picture, that was hard, kind of, because he came over and we were talking and we were like, oh, we're gonna take a picture together because we haven't taken a picture since we were 8, and we didn't get to. He left, and then we had messaged, and we were messaging about, oh, come back over and like, we gotta take that picture, because we gotta take that picture. I never got to. Bobby was killed in a mental health crisis. And he went for a walk and he was crying, and someone had called the cops to go check on him for a possible suicide attempt. And the cop who responded ended up shooting my cousin 7 times as my cousin's crying. I never been to Bobby's his gravesite. I feel like he's more at the murals, and I don't know necessarily why. But I think maybe it is because like community will come and like I remember sitting over there and someone was like, who is that guy? And then I told them and they were like, oh crap, like I need to do something about that. Last time we saw him was at his funeral. And that was hard because that was hard. But yeah, so I don't have a picture with him.
Murals also line the streets in Oakland, California, where families use the art to remind them of their history.
I walked home one day, and it's like 2.5, 3 miles of the stretch of Oakland where there's, murals on either side of me. Every single mural was a depiction of a dead black or brown person that had been lynched by state violence. And by the time I got home, I was just like, I'm putting a mural on my house, and it's not going to remind me of my oppression. It's going to remind me and my community of our greatness. It's not going to remind me of what's being done to us. It's going to remind me of what we do. And that's the only way we're going to survive. They're going to keep reminding us of our oppression. We can't also do it. That's just ridiculous. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous. They're not going to remind us that we descend from greatness, that we've started the civilizations across the world. They're not going to remind. We have to teach ourselves that, and we have to teach our children that.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thank you for joining us. For more on our special In Pursuit, head to inpursuit.news21.com.
Different about you, a new brightness in your eyes.
Welcome to the Hotel Portofino.
How utterly charming.
Something is coming, can you feel it now?
My dreams have been invigorated.
We like stories that are going to elevate us.
What is your sense now of the situation?
They gave us possibilities.
This is the opportunity to share my recipes.
There are heroes everywhere you look.
You're going deep into the heart of America.
The Holocaust is a story that Americans have to reckon with, too.
This is pure exploration.
Wow!
I want to spend the rest of my life with you.
Okay, let's go right up in here and start having some fun.
Such a thrill to be able to do this.
Recreation is the gateway drug to conservation.
How do you create that perfect straight edge?
You can do anything.
History is today. Chasing the American dream.
Experience something personal.
A place of imagination.
I can go anywhere I want to go.
You guys are just gonna love it.
An entertainment experience unlike anything.
There's something for everyone with Passport on the PBS Video app.